as I always do, I'm going to start out by just asking folks to mute any electronic devices they might have that might go bing in the night and all that stuff. I'm going to make a couple of changes in the agenda here. And I'm going to, one of them is going to be to jump the swearing in of our village clerk to the top of the agenda so that then she can perform her usual function of confirming the presence of a quorum. So we will start with that. I would, just as a reminder and maybe an explanation for people who might not be familiar with how this works, there's a bit of a quirk in Ohio law that while virtually all elected officials and all elected officials for the village get sworn in during the first meeting in January, except for the village clerk. And that is because the village clerk has to assist in closing out the financial records for the previous year, and so it was thought best to have her, the old village clerk, which in this case, same person, but available for the first quarter of the year and to be sworn in on April 1st and that. So that is what we are going to do for the beginning here, and I ask Ms. Terrell to come forward.
Do it back here. Let's do it back here.
Let's do it in the back.
Like, I might not be able to see you from this side.
Yeah. Well, that's good for you.
Oh.
Raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name. I, Amended Ordinance, do hereby swear. That I will support the Constitution of the United States. And the Constitution of the State of Ohio. And I will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of clerk for the village of Glendale. According to the best of my ability. So help me God. And going to turn to noting that there is a quorum present. Madam Clerk, can you confirm the existence of a quorum?
I confirm the existence of a quorum.
I will say we do not have a full house here. One of our council members, Will Kreidler, informed me today that he will not be able to make it due to a death in the family. I'll have a little more to say about that later on. Before we go any further, I'm going to repeat something that we did at the last meeting, and that is just ask everybody to take a moment of silence to recognize the suffering that's going on in Ukraine. It's a war of conquest by a stronger neighbor against a weaker one, and I think it doesn't hurt for all of us to just step back and give some thought to where they're going to and what they're going through and show some support. So I ask for a moment of silence. Thank you. And we will turn to the minutes of previous meetings last month. And we start with the minutes from the regular council meeting of March 7th. Those draft minutes have been circulated and changed. And I would ask if there is a motion to accept the minutes.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Is there any discussion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, are we referring to the minutes which the clerk circulated this afternoon?
Yes.
There was a revised set that went out immediately after the Planning Commission, so about 6:02, that includes some of the changes that I had missed that Ms. Duke submitted.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
If there is no further discussion, all those in favor of accepting the minutes of the regular council meeting of March 7th, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. And we turn to the minutes of the special meeting of March 28th. And those minutes have been circulated. Some changes have been made. And so I would ask, is there a motion to accept these minutes as circulated?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. I am now going to move up on the agenda the ordinances, first three ordinances in new business. And this is the swearing in of some new police officers, which is always one of the highlights of a meeting for me. So I will begin, and then we'll start with an ordinance, and then when we're done with the ordinances for these three officers, I will swear each of them in individually. So we start with an ordinance appointing Seth Profit to the position of police officer on a part-time basis, establishing compensation and declaring an emergency. Chief, could you give us a little information about Seth?
Yes. Seth is 28. He holds a associate's degree in criminal justice. He's working on his bachelor's degree at the University of Cincinnati. Seth was in the Marine Corps in the reserves for 7 years. Traveled to 13 different countries. He's a graduate of Butler Tech Police Academy, and he's been a police officer at City of Hamilton, Preble County, and Oxford Township.
Do I have a motion for this ordinance?
So moved.
Second.
And a motion to dispense with three reads?
So moved. Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
For ordinance 2022-13, to dispense with the three reads, Mr. Bessel.
Aye.
Ms. Duke.
Aye.
Ms. Masenko.
Aye.
Mr. Basemith.
Aye.
Ms. Baldridge.
Aye.
For the ordinance, Mr. Bessel.
Aye.
Ms. Duke.
Aye.
Ms. Masenko.
Aye.
Mr. Basemith.
Aye.
Ms. Baldridge.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, we turn to ordinance 2022-14, an ordinance appointing Andrew Cheatham to the position of police officer on a part-time basis, establishing compensation and declaring an emergency. Chief, can you tell us something about Andrew?
Yes. Andrew grew up in Forest Park. He graduated from Winton Woods High School. He earned a associate's degree from Brown Mackie College. Married to his wife Brandy. They have a 12-year-old son. They live in Coleraine Township. Most of the guys on the police department have known Andrew for a long time. He was a security guard over at the Tri-County Mall. We had interaction with him over there. I think Andrew will be a good fit.
Thank you. Do I have a motion for the ordinance?
So moved.
Second.
And a motion to dispense with three reads?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
For ordinance 2022-14, to dispense with the three reads, Mr. Bessel.
Aye.
Ms. Duke.
Aye.
Ms. Masenko.
Aye.
Mr. Basemith.
Aye.
Ms. Baldridge.
Aye.
For the ordinance, Mr. Bessel.
Aye.
Ms. Duke.
Aye.
Ms. Masenko.
Aye.
Mr. Basemith.
Aye.
Ms. Baldridge.
Aye.
Thank you.
And we turn to ordinance 2022-15, an ordinance appointing Cameron Emmerman to the position of school resource officer on a part-time basis, establishing compensation and declaring an emergency. Chief, can you tell us about Cameron?
Cameron is currently the school resource officer for Batavia Schools. He'll be holding that same position with us. and he's been there for approximately 2 years. He's been a police officer since 2001. Cameron has 2 children, ages 13 and 14. They live in New Richmond. In Cameron's free time, he likes eating at new restaurants and exploring the city.
Okay, do I have a motion for the ordinance?
So moved.
Second.
And a motion to dispense with 3 reads?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
For ordinance 2022-15, to dispense with the 3 reads, Mr. Bessel,
Aye.
Ms. Duke,
Aye.
Ms. Masenko,
Aye.
Mr. Basemuth,
Aye.
Ms. Baldridge.
Aye.
For the ordinance, Mr. Bessel,
Aye.
Ms. Duke,
Aye.
Ms. Masenko,
Aye.
Mr. Basemuth,
Aye.
Ms. Baldridge.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And now, as the final step to make it official, I am going to swear each of these folks in, and I'm going to ask Chief, do you have any plans for presenting badges, which I see that you have arrayed in front of you?
I have given them their badges. We can pin them, yes.
Okay, very good. So then all we have to do is swear them in. Raise your right hand and repeat after me. State your name. Do hereby support the Constitution of the United States
And I support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Ohio,
and the Constitution of the State of Ohio.
and I will faithfully
That I will faithfully
and impartially discharge
and impartially discharge
the duties of police officer of the Village of Glendale
the duties of police officer of the Village of Glendale
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability.
so help me God.
So help me God.
Thank you. Welcome aboard.
Thank you. Welcome.
Raise your right hand. Repeat after me. I state your name.
I, as chief,
Do hereby swear
hereby swear
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
that I will support the Constitution of the United States
and the Constitution of the State of Ohio,
and the Constitution of the State of Ohio.
and I will faithfully
And I will faithfully
and impartially discharge
and impartially discharge
the duties of police officer
the duties of police officer
of the Village of Glendale
of the Village of Glendale
to the best of my ability,
to the best of my ability.
so help me God.
So help me God.
Welcome aboard. Hereby swear that I will support the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of Ohio, and I will faithfully and impartially discharge the duties of school resource officer for the Village of Glendale to the best of my ability, so help me God. Welcome aboard.
10 minutes or something. Maybe.
Okay, and to continue with the ceremony, I have a proclamation to read. We do this every year for the Arbor Day Foundation, and it is to recognize the importance of trees in our village, and and it's something that the village holds very dear. We have in fact been a tree city for 25 years. Is it 25? 26 now?
26.
26 now, okay. And for many of those years, we've gotten a special growth award to show that we're, as good as we are, we're improving. So I'm going to read this proclamation into the record. It is a proclamation designating April 29th, 2022 as Arbor Day in the village of Glendale. Whereas trees in the urban forest are an important component of our community's infrastructure, and whereas trees in the urban forest have been shown to reduce crime, vandalism, and domestic violence, as well as vehicular speed, and therefore are important components of our community's safety mission. And whereas trees in the urban forest extend the life of our community's street surface and reduce stormwater runoff, and therefore are important resources for our community's service mission. And whereas trees in the urban forest improve the concentration of school-age children, allowing them to perform better in school and make better life choices, and therefore are valuable assets for our schools and educators teaching the next generation. And whereas trees in the urban forest reduce air conditioning and heating costs for residents, and therefore make our community more livable, save our residents money, and reduce our need for foreign energy. And whereas trees in the urban forest make our neighborhoods more inviting and attractive and cause new home buyers to want to live in our community and be willing to pay more for a house in our community, and therefore are foundations for our community's community development efforts. And whereas trees in the urban forest attract shoppers and businesses, inspire shoppers to visit more frequently, stay longer, and therefore are important components of our community's economic development mission. And whereas trees in the urban forest reduce water pollution and therefore are an integral part of our community's healthy water supply. Now therefore, I, Donald A. Lofty, Mayor of the Village of Glendale, Ohio, do hereby proclaim April 29th, 2022 as Arbor Day in the Village of Glendale, and I urge all citizens to support efforts to protect and nurture our trees and urban forest, not just for the beauty they provide, but for the benefits they give our residents and community. In witness whereof, I have hereunto subscribed my name this 4th day of April in the year 2022. This is verbiage provided to us thoughtfully by the Arbor Day Foundation. I did have to cut a few of their claims that seemed to go too far, but it was fun. We're now going to turn to the public comment and presentation section of our agenda, and of course I've just read the proclamation, and so now I invite anybody here who wants to address council to step forward.
Good evening, Council and Mayor. My name is Bill Parrish. I'm Executive Director of the Eckstein Cultural Arts Center at 220 East Sharon Road. And I'm here tonight to offer an invitation to Council and to the greater listening community. We're having the Eckstein School cleanup. It's going to be an opportunity for community to come out, a real community project where we'd like to invite everybody. So this is also an invitation to council. Please come. It's going to happen on Saturday, April 23rd from noon to 6 p.m. It's going to be good food, good fellowship, good music, and just a real good time. Bring your gardening gloves, bring your favorite gardening tool. There won't be that much work really to do for everybody, but we're encouraging everyone to come because even those who don't want to work or do anything, we just want you to come anyway. Bring your chair and just sit out, have a good time. We're hoping that it's going to be good weather. We're just hoping that the entire community will come and support us in this cleanup effort. It's sort of our initial foray into the renovation of the Eckstein School. We also stress that it's not really going to be about the work. We're going to have tons of people who are coming, Eckstein alumni, their offspring, and so it's going to be a real sort of a celebratory event, and we're just hoping the work's going to get done and we're going to have a good time at the same time. So just want to invite you personally tonight and to let you know that the Eckstein School project is now kicking off. So thank you for listening.
Mr. Mayor, if Mr. Parrish could repeat the time and the date.
Oh, I'm sorry, the time is, the date is Saturday, the 23rd, which is 2 weeks from this Saturday. And the time will be from noon to 6 p.m. So if you want to come, like if you're an early person, you want to get in and have a good time and then leave, it's somewhere between that time frame. But we know that people are going to stay beyond 6 p.m. So we just thought for those who like to hang around, have a good time, it's going to be good food. Carlos Reed's going to break his grill out and we're going to really give it a real workout. And then some of the Eckstein alumni are going to be there. So we'll have a microphone and we'll give people opportunities to share and maybe even share stories or just have some good conversation, good fun.
Mr. Mayor, may I ask, are you focusing on outside work that day?
Yeah,
Work?
yeah.
Okay.
The focus will be on the outside work, and I will probably send an email. You'll probably get an email from me, David, about the brush, because we're figuring that, all we get together, where you want it and how the pickup might take place of that. So, but please come because it's going to be fun. I think we're going to, and I think that for the most part that for the Eckstein alumni and people, that are still here, that are still in the village, not just that, but I think the offspring of those, it's just going to kind of be a gathering point for everything. So thanks for listening.
Thank you, Bill. Does anybody else want to address council?
Good evening, council. My name is Kevin Parrish, Bill's brother. That was enlightening what he brought to council. My comments aren't so enlightening. Actually, they're criticizing the efforts or the lack of effort and the lack of honesty and transparency that's been shown by council since you declared that that's how we're going to start this year, Mayor. Mainly for the water issues that still affect many residents in the village of Glendale. Actually, the status of that is calamity. More and more people are coming out and speaking about this because it's affecting them. It's affected a lot of people for decades, and they haven't come out, but you can only stand so much before you have to speak out on it. My main issue is the CMOM, the one that we got awarded the $90,000 or the $89,600 after the deduction that was awarded in February. I'm talking about the CMOM that you guys submitted August the 19th, after the one that was submitted August the 16th after the Sharon Road Bridge incident. You've kept that money for over a year and you haven't done anything with it. But I would urge residents to put in a public records request to see this document, to see how unprepared we are for addressing this issue in this village. Right now, they're preparing to do some work up here on Oak in that area, and that's like putting a Band-Aid on a wound that surely needs a tourniquet until you can get to the operating room. This issue of water in our village is massive. It affects all residents because it's the whole system that's just broke down. Now, the village knows that, but I think they're overwhelmed because they haven't made any plans. But I would urge all residents to put in a public records request for the CMOM. If not, give me a call. I'll email you documents and show you some things that would just amaze you, because they're not my documents. These are documents that's coming from the state. And these are coming from the people who are in contact with this village. Another thing is, you know, you say about honesty and transparency, but when you intentionally lie to the court, then I don't think that's presenting an honest and a transparent picture. And it sure goes to what type of moral integrity we're dealing with. But I'm not gonna waste the council's time on this issue. I'm hoping that the listeners who are still experiencing water issues will continue to experience water issues, because we've got a rain that's getting ready to come in a couple of weeks. That's gonna, you know, bring in the spring to have these flowers growing, and that's gonna be massive. You need answers because you're not getting answers from the council. Also, in the public records request, I noticed we swore in another person on the commission. Has the commission had a public records meeting?
You have about a minute.
Is that a yes? Is that an answerable question? Has the commission, Public Records Commission, had a meeting? They swore in a new person.
No, we were waiting for the new person so we could schedule a meeting.
Okay. I would urge anybody that's listening also to ask and put in a public records request for when was the completion of the Phase 1 sanitary sewer reduction project. As a black resident, I've been denied that opportunity to have access to those public records, and the village of Glendale has spent thousands of dollars defending its position and denying me public records. But I bet any white resident has more privilege, and just simply putting in that public records request, you probably could walk out of it on the same day.
Your time has
That'll do
expired.
me. Thank you.
Does anybody else wish to address council?
Yes, I would, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. First of all, I have 2 points, but I think
Could you introduce yourself, please?
I'm sorry.
We all know who you are, but for
My
the
name is
record.
Jenny Kilgore, and I live on Sharon Road. I have 2 points to make, but I'm pretty sure that I'll make them within the time limit. First of all, we're now preparing for the Memorial Day essay contest, which every 4th, 5th, and 6th grader who lives or goes to school in Glendale is eligible to compete. The instructions will be going out to the schools this week. There will be a memo provided for our administrator to put in the weekly newsletter, and everyone will have plenty of information. It's always an exciting time. We had to put that off for 2 years for COVID, and we're glad to be back. My second point, I would like to congratulate and thank the members of council and our local government for their due diligence and their openness regarding problems that we may have in our community and the mitigation of those problems. There are so many stops in place, and I would cite audits, oversight, and agencies that are in place to oversee processes and maintain our accountability. And I know, having been in the seats that you are now sitting, that you do this as a volunteer. You are an elected official. You spend copious time and efforts in order to make the village a better place, and I thank you very much and appreciate all your efforts. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody else wish to address council? Hearing no one, we will move on to the old business section of the agenda, which contains only one item. That would be ordinance number 2022-03, an ordinance amending Chapter 154.42 and 154.46 of the Village of Glendale Code of Ordinances, establishing exceptions to the parking and paving guidelines for properties in the historic district related to setbacks for driveways and parking areas as recommended by the Glendale Planning and Historic Preservation Commission. Just to bring people back up to speed on this one, we had an initial reading of this ordinance in January, and another the second read was February. And at that point, some questions were raised about the ordinance, and it was decided that the best thing to do was refer it to a committee, in this case, the police committee. And so that's what occurred, and the police committee met to discuss the ordinance on March 10th. It was, among other things, pointed out that what this ordinance is intended to do is relieve a hardship on some owners that might have fairly narrow lots, such that they would not be able to construct a usable driveway for their home within the requirement that there be a 5-foot setback between their driveway and the property line. I hope everybody followed that one. There was a concern that we should, for those types of narrow lots, we should relax this the 5-foot setback requirement. But there was another concern that perhaps neighbors whose homes might be close to their property line would then be they would face problems. And that was the issue that was basically sent back to the police committee. The police committee considered the issue. It was pointed out that the 5-foot setback requirement was only put in place about 12 to 15 years ago. And so, while only, that's kind of a long time, but not in Glendale. And so there was some thought that, okay, the village lived for many years without a setback requirement at all. And that this was going to apply to a limited number of homes in a number of places. The police committee then discussed it further and came up with some new language for the ordinance. And I would invite council, if you have it in front of you, to turn to your draft of the ordinance. And it is section E2A. And there is a sentence beginning with capital and it states, and where adjoining neighborhood properties have driveways that existed prior to the implementation of the 5-foot setback ordinance, thus creating a neighborhood precedent. So in other words, you're not only has to be narrow, but there has to be neighbors who have driveways that would encroach on the 5-foot setback. That is the only change from the ordinance that the council looked at before. I am now going to ask, I believe this matter is before council, but I think we need another motion because it's been a long time. So do I have a motion for this ordinance?
So moved, but we'll ask a question. Did we put this on the table at the last meeting?
No, we did not, oddly
Okay.
enough. I went over the minutes of that February meeting, kind of expecting to find it on the table, but nothing in the minutes said it was on the table. But in any event, this
Okay.
will render that moot because we have a motion for the ordinance. And do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. Is there discussion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, if convenient, I would prefer that we put it back on the table, because then we recap the presentation and prior deliberations on this ordinance, and it's not just this, what we're saying tonight.
And that's perfectly, within council's right. I just felt like the ordinance in its then form was before council for actually 3 months, because we had a public hearing on it in December, and then we did the hearing in January and February, and the only change is that and clause that I read from. So I kind of thought it was in front of council. Council understood it as well as they were going to already. But again, that's a thought, is put it on the table and
Mayor,
wait for another month.
excuse me. I agree with Councilmember Duke as to that, and then for any change, I would first vote to bring that amendment from the last reading,
Oh, of course, yes.
and then move forward after those two
Thank
votes. You're welcome.
Okay. Do I have a vote for the amendment to the ordinance adding the and clause?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion of just the and clause? Can we do this voice vote, or is it by vote, roll call?
Roll call.
Okay. Madam Clerk?
For the amendment for the and clause, Mr. Bessel,
Aye.
Ms. Duke,
Aye?
Ms. Masenko,
Aye.
Mr. Baseman,
Aye.
Ms. Baldridge.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay. So now we have an amended ordinance in front of us, and a question is whether it should be put on the table for another month, or whether we're ready to vote on it, and also just whatever questions people might have or discussion points. Okay. Madam Marilyn, are you making a motion to put it on the table?
Yes, I will. I move to bring forth, is it the same ordinance number?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you, David. I move to bring forth ordinance 2022-03
-03. Yep.
from the table.
Okay.
Second?
Okay. Madam Clerk, or is there any discussion just to remove the ordinance from the table? No? Madam Clerk?
To remove the ordinance from the table, Mr. Bessel,
Aye.
Ms. Duke,
Aye.
Ms. Masenko. Aye. Mr. Basemith,
Aye.
Ms. Baldridge.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay. The motion is now before council. Is there any further discussion of the ordinance? Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
For the ordinance, Mr. Bessel,
Aye.
Ms. Duke,
Aye.
Ms. Masenko. Aye. Mr. Basemith,
Aye.
Ms. Baldridge.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay. Motion carried. We turn now to ordinance 2022-16, an ordinance increasing compensation for current part-time police officers and declaring an emergency. Chief, could you just give us some background on this?
We're raising the limit for the 3 part-timers that have been on for an extended period of time. Were full-time with us and then went part-time and have been here for a while. And then we set limits for the new part-timers.
Okay. And I gather this compensation rate will exceed that of the part-time officers that we just swore in this evening, correct?
It includes their pay, yes.
Right, because in recognition of the
Yes.
long service of these officers.
Yes.
Okay. Any discussion of this ordinance?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, please. Do I have a motion for this ordinance?
So moved.
Second?
And a motion to dispense with 3 reads?
So moved.
Second?
Any further discussion? Madam Clerk?
For ordinance 2022-16, to dispense with the 3 reads, Mr. Bessel,
Aye.
Ms. Duke,
Aye.
Ms. Masenko.
Aye.
Mr. Basemuth.
Aye.
Ms. Baldridge.
Aye.
For the ordinance, Mr. Bessel.
Aye.
Ms. Duke.
Aye.
Ms. Masenko.
Aye.
Mr. Basemuth.
Aye.
Ms. Baldridge.
Aye.
Thank you.
We come now to ordinance 2022-17, an ordinance establishing a transaction fee for credit card payments to the Village of Glendale and Glendale Utility Department. And David, maybe you can give some introduction here.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. This ordinance came out of a motion from the Utilities Committee to bring to council to consider a transaction fee for the credit card transactions that the village runs through our office. This includes namely transactions done towards the payment of water bills. Village has approximately 1,600 transactions a year, and we pay a fee for each of those transactions. And the purpose of this ordinance is to assess that fee towards those users who pay with a credit card. So I don't know, Jeff, if you have any other, because it did come from utilities, I don't know if you have anything that you'd like to add to that?
No, thank you.
Okay.
Okay, do I have a motion for the ordinance?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. There is no waiving of 3 reads here. This is the first read of the ordinance. Is there any discussion at this time, or can we just?
Oh,
Yes.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
David, if you also point out that it would not become effective until October 1st, I believe.
Correct, thank you.
And when you say effect in October, that means that transactions after October 1st would be the first ones that would pay the fee?
Beginning on October the 1st.
Okay, yes.
Yes.
Right, okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so the ordinance.
Question, Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
For clarity, not that $3 is a tremendous amount of money, but is this $3 per swipe? We discussed this in the Utilities Committee, and it's not quite clear on the face of this.
The way that this ordinance is written is that yes, per transaction, meaning that for each credit card transaction. So if a user pays with multiple credit cards, that would be multiple transactions. So it would be multiple fees.
May I ask, just because I don't know, are there residents who physically come to the office with a credit card to pay their utility bill? Is that what this is
Yes.
generally referencing?
They can also do it online.
There are 3 ways that folks can pay with a credit card: in person, online, or over the phone. This would apply to all 3 of those methods.
Okay.
I might point out, since you were not at the meeting, that the
Jeff,
cost...
could you get closer to your microphone?
I'm sorry. I point out that the cost to the village currently is about $5,000 per year, which will be recovered by this small fee.
Okay.
Thank you. We'll now turn to ordinance 2022-18, an ordinance authorizing the clerk to void certain outstanding checks from general checking and enterprise checking and declaring an emergency. David, can you give us some background here?
Certainly. So through my through the office recent work, reconciling our 21 books, we've discovered a number of checks, the check registers are attached, that it seems quite comically have held on to our books for, in some instances, about 22 years. So our checks are printed with a 90-day void period, but these checks have been sitting out and have never reconciled. So the purpose of this ordinance is general housekeeping, so that when we do void these checks and we are audited in 23, that we have documentation to prove that council did approve the voiding of these checks and getting them off our books.
Do I have a motion for this ordinance?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Do I have a motion for, Dan, to dispense with 3 reads?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Discussion? Madam Clerk?
For ordinance 2022-18, to dispense with the 3 reads, Mr. Bessel.
Aye.
Ms. Duke.
Aye.
Ms. Masenko.
Aye.
Mr. Basemuth.
Aye.
Ms. Baldridge.
Aye.
For the ordinance, Mr. Bessel.
Aye.
Ms. Duke.
Aye.
Ms. Masenko?
Aye.
Mr. Basemuth?
Aye.
Ms. Baldridge?
Aye.
Thank you.
And we turn to ordinance 2022-19, an ordinance approving the installation of tree marker signage in Floral Park to commemorate Lawrence and Joanne Skoranek and declaring an emergency. I think I can just give some background on this one. You know, this is something that the Urban Forestry Board voted to recommend to council to commemorate two longtime residents. They already have trees planted in Floral Park, and we are now going to have markers on those trees commemorating each of them, or at the base of each tree, I'm not sure which. And we think this is very appropriate. The signs themselves, I believe, are the same size as the baby tree signs.
Yes.
Is that right, David? Yeah. So, do I have a motion for this ordinance?
So moved.
Second.
And to dispense with 3 reads?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? Madam Clerk?
For ordinance 2022-19, to dispense with the 3 reads, Mr. Bessel?
Aye.
Ms. Duke?
Aye.
Ms. Masenko?
Aye.
Mr. Basemuth?
Aye.
Ms. Baldridge?
Aye.
For the ordinance, Mr. Bessel?
Aye.
Ms. Duke?
Aye.
Ms. Masenko?
Aye.
Mr. Basemuth?
Aye.
Ms. Baldridge?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay. And we turn to ordinance 2022-20, an ordinance accepting the donation of the sculpture Delicate Balance, circa 2008, by Jody Skoranek to be placed in Floral Park and declaring an emergency. This one again is about the Skoraneks. As we all know, Jody was a very gifted artist and sculptor, and she created a number of sculptures that we can see throughout the village. One of them that was still on her property and available at the time of her passing has been identified as for donation by the family. I don't know, did they get photos of the sculpture, David?
There was a photo that was circulated in the packet.
Okay, it wasn't in the latest packet. Okay.
Oh.
Does anybody need to see one? Okay, fine. All right. Do we have a motion? Where are we now? I'm sorry.
Yeah, we have no motion.
Ask for a motion.
I need a motion.
Yes, you need a motion.
So moved. To
Second.
dispense with 3 reads.
Wait, is that what we're
I'm
doing?
asking, are you moving to dispense with 3 reads, Marilyn?
Nancy
I'm-
was moving to dispense with.
I'm happy to do that.
Okay.
What did we need, Becky?
I have Ms. Duke as motioning for the ordinance, and then Ms. Masenko motioning for the
That's,
dismissal of the 3 reads. So I
Actually-
don't have seconds on any of them.
Got it.
Okay. Is there any discussion? Okay. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll?
Sorry, I need a second on
Which one do you need a second on first?
both. Normally we do the ordinance first,
Okay, I second the ordinance.
and now I need a second on the 3 reads.
So moved. Second on the 3 reads.
Thank you.
To dispense with 3 reads.
Ordinance 2022-20, to dispense with the 3 reads. Mr. Bessel?
Aye.
Ms. Duke?
Aye.
Ms. Masenko?
aye.
Mr. Basemuth?
Aye.
Ms. Baldridge?
Aye.
For the ordinance, Mr. Bessel?
Aye.
Ms. Duke?
Aye.
Ms. Masenko?
Aye.
Mr. Basemuth?
Aye.
Ms. Baldridge?
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay, we turn to ordinance 2022-21, an ordinance approving the dimensions of tree signage to be installed in conjunction with the Glendale Arboretum project and declaring an emergency. David, can you give us a little on this?
Certainly. So the Urban Forestry Board has been working diligently, specifically Dr. Joe Moravec has been working diligently for over the last year, I would say, to establish an arboretum in the village of Glendale. An organization by the name of ArbNet designates that status, and the village is eligible as a Class 1 arboretum. Part of that qualification requires the identification and labeling of trees. The purpose of the ordinance tonight is simply to approve the dimensions of the signage so that we can process an order for the back plates on which the signs will be installed. The signage, design, content, everything will come to council at a later date. But this is just to approve the dimensions of the signs that will be attached to the trees.
And David, again, how does the size of these signs compare to the baby tree signs?
These are, let me pull up my dimensions here. Give me just 1 second, thank you. These signs will be 3 by 5, so these will be about the same size as the Jody Skoranek and Larry Skoranek signs that were just approved.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a motion for this ordinance?
So moved.
And a motion, second? I need a second.
Second.
Okay, and a motion to dispense with 3 reads?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion?
David, are these similar? I know that it sounds like they're a little bit larger than the current tree signs that we see.
Yes, they're very similar.
Is the design of the sign itself, I understand that's somewhat similar as well?
The actual like face and content of the
Yes,
sign?
the face and
Yeah, that's still being decided by the Urban Forestry Board, but will include the common name, the Latin species name, and then a QR code to allow folks to access electronic information on the village's website related to the trees.
Okay.
You're saying 3 by 5 inches.
Correct, inches, yes.
That sounds very similar to what we already have, minus the QR code.
Yes.
And the village will stay in control of that information.
Yeah, that information will be posted on the village website, and then the village will work with the Urban Forestry Board to update it as needed.
Thanks.
Question, the second whereas clause mentions a Van Cleave Park. Where is that?
That is the small park along East Fountain as you're heading northwest along Fountain.
Is that the one, excuse me?
The one across from
Referred
the...
to as Little Floral Park?
Yes.
Yes,
Yes.
yeah, it has many names.
Across the street from Will and Stephanie Sawyer?
Yeah, and across the street from the First Presbyterian Church.
Do I have a motion for this ordinance?
So moved.
Second.
And motion to dispense with 3 reads?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. Discussion? Madam Clerk?
For ordinance 2022-21, to dispense with the 3 reads, Mr. Bessel.
Aye.
Ms. Duke.
Aye.
Ms. Masenko.
Aye.
Mr. Baseman.
Aye.
Ms. Baldridge.
Aye.
For the ordinance, Mr. Bessel.
Aye.
Ms. Duke.
Aye.
Ms. Masenko.
Aye.
Mr. Baseman.
Aye.
Ms. Baldridge.
Aye.
Thank you.
We turn to ordinance 2022-22, an ordinance classifying the position of fire chief as a part-time position, setting compensation, and declaring an emergency. And I think, let's see, I think we pretty much know where this ordinance originated, and it has been approved by the fire committee. Nancy, do you have anything to say about it?
No, I don't. I think we've covered it previously.
Okay, do I have a motion for the ordinance?
So moved.
Second.
And to dispense with 3 reads?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? Did we capture the latest change from Kathy on this to eliminate the redundancy of what is now what was in one version was section 3?
Yes, the final version has section 1, which reads that the position will not to exceed an average of 30 hours per week per year. Section 2 sets the compensation at $24.86 hourly, and then section 3 is the typical emergency language.
Okay, great. All right, any further discussion? Madam Clerk?
For ordinance 2022-22, to dispense with the 3 reads, Mr. Bessel.
Aye.
Ms. Duke.
Aye.
Ms. Masenko.
Aye.
Mr. Baseman.
Aye.
Ms. Baldridge.
Aye.
For the ordinance, Mr. Bessel.
Aye.
Ms. Duke.
Aye.
Ms. Masenko.
Aye.
Mr. Baseman.
Aye.
Ms. Baldridge.
Aye.
Thank you.
We turn now to Resolution 22-12, And this is a resolution of opposition to House Bill 563 pertaining to the regulation of short-term rentals in the village of Glendale. As I think I circulated to the council, and I'll just give a brief explanation of it. There is a bill pending in the Ohio legislature that would limit the ability of local governments to regulate short-term rental properties within their village. This is despite the fact that the Ohio Constitution affords municipalities the authority to exercise considerably broad powers of self-government within their jurisdictions, and the concerns that the village of Glendale has had over the years with short-term rentals springing up and without any permits or review. And so I have already sent a letter to our legislators, to our representative and senator, opposing this legislation. The Ohio Municipal League suggested that we also send in a resolution, which has been drafted here. So do I have a motion for the resolution?
So moved.
Second.
Okay. There is no waiving 3 reads because that's not necessary for a resolution. So is there any discussion of this? Madam Clerk.
Excuse me. I would emphasize, not necessarily in this resolution, but perhaps in a cover letter, that the considerations in the 6th whereas clause are provided for statutorily by the village, and it is more than just a subjective observation. The legislature, our village plan, requires us to consider increased traffic, requires us to consider the character of the neighborhood, and this gives, I think, more impetus.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion? Madam Clerk?
For Resolution 2022-12, Mr. Bessel.
Aye.
Ms. Duke.
Aye.
Ms. Masenko.
Aye.
Mr. Basemuth.
Aye.
Ms. Baldridge.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay. And now we turn to Verbal Resolution 2022-13. This will be a resolution confirming the mayor's appointment of Clerk Rebecca Terrell to the Public Records Commission for a term ending March 31st, 2026. Ms. Terrell should be a member of our Records Commission, and so we want to make sure that she is on it by act of the mayor and with the approval of council. So do I have a motion for this resolution?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, is there any discussion? Okay. Do we need a roll call, or is this a voice? This is just a voice vote, right?
Yep. Voice vote is adequate. Excuse me, I keep losing my voice. Voice vote is adequate.
Okay. All those in favor of this resolution say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried. We turn now to the reports of the mayor and standing committees. And I will begin with my report. I just got at the beginning some very good news to the effect that we have contrary to what the agenda would indicate, we had a birth in our community recently. Stella Soleil Zering Clark was born on March 7th to Mark P. Clark and Amy C. Sanders. So I am hereby announcing that birth and inviting the parents to put in their application for a baby tree. Unfortunately, we have also had two deaths. Jill Denice, daughter of a longtime resident, Gail Denice, passed away on March 25th at the age of 53. And this is simply a tragic confluence of events because last month I had to announce that Jill's brother, John Robbie Denice, had also passed away on February 28th. So within a month, it's just a terrible thing, and that's so unfortunate. And just on Saturday, we lost another resident, David Gray Mason. David was the father-in-law of Councilman Will Kreidler, who, as I said, could not attend the meeting today. Mr. Mason passed away on April 2nd at the age of 79. So with that, I would ask that we give a moment of silence. Mr. Administrator, do you have a report?
I do. Thank you, Mayor. The village's 2021 annual report has been submitted to the state auditor. Final 2021 financial reports are being prepared. That includes first quarter of 22 as well. All of that will be circulated to council prior to the May 2 meeting. That also includes first quarter check reconciliations for those interested, bank reconciliations for those interested. On the utilities side, the flow meters that were discussed at a previous utilities committee meeting have been ordered. We're anticipating delivery in late April. There was a comment that was made in the earlier of the meeting that the village received approximately $90,000 towards the CMOM project and that money was not being utilized. That is untrue. As the Utilities Committee was shown at their last meeting, we have performed underground locating of all water, sewer, and storm utilities in the village through an online mapping system that's going to be very helpful to our crews. And we will be proceeding with televising with those lines underground to determine their conditions. And additionally, a point of continued interest is that I've been in contact with the contractor responsible for the demolition at 65 Coral, and they've assured me that work will be beginning in the next 2 weeks. Don't have a specific date yet, but we're hammering that out, but it'll be underway in the next 2 weeks.
Thank you. Madam Clerk, would you call for the committee reports?
Finance Committee, please.
The Finance Committee did meet on March the 9th and looked at general fund projections going out for the next 5 years. It's very clear that the pressures from inflation and maintaining our village will cause us to have to seek additional revenue going forward. We plan to meet again on this coming Wednesday, the 6th, and we will look at different types of revenue options that will be available to the village. That's it for finance. Yes,
Question?
ma'am.
We're scheduled to meet on the 6th?
On
Finance.
Yes, the 6th.
Good, okay.
Yes, this Wednesday.
Thanks.
Mhm.
Okay. Thank you. Fire Committee, please.
Fire Committee met jointly with Buildings Committee March 9, and largely to go through some of the remaining items on the east facade of the building. And I think that's really all I have, except then to turn it over to Captain Lehrman.
Thank you, Councilwoman. I have copies of the fire report if anybody needs them, but I believe everybody received them via email. Just going to hit a couple highlights from the last month at the fire department. Happy to report that we just completed a 36-hour volunteer course of 8 members that completed last week, and those members are sitting their state test next week. So they've met all the criteria, passed all the testing up until this point, so next week they're all going to take their state tests and become certified firefighters in the state of Ohio. A couple other things that we've got with the weather changing this month. We've got some trainings that are going to be taking place in and around the village. We have the, from the Ohio Fire Academy, the search and rescue trailer. That's going to be placed on the east apron here at the firehouse. And with that trailer is a regional asset that will allow our firefighters, as well as other firefighters in our neighboring communities, to train in that trailer on search and rescue techniques. So that's coming at the end of the month. The middle of the month, we have Duke Energy coming in to do a live line demo. And what that is those folks come in and talk to us about power lines, down power lines, the types of things to look for during storm damage, things of that nature, so our firefighters can be prepared to respond during the storm season, should that ever happen, which typically does. We're going to continue some officer training with our core officer group over the next couple months and bring some of those officers up to speed. So I think that's really all I have for this past month that took place in the fire department. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Laws and Claims, please.
The Laws and Claims Committee met on March 31st. It continued markup and came away with a proposed ordinance with recommended language for council to consider at its May meeting next month. That concludes the Laws Committee report.
Thank you. Police Committee, somebody going to cover for police?
Yeah, Mr. Kreidler just wanted to make sure that that everyone knew. Police Committee met on March 10. The minutes have been posted, and the agenda of that meeting involved just about everything that happened here tonight. The part-time officers and their pay scale, and the mayor spoke to the other item, which was the driveway setback ordinance. So that's all for Mr. Kreidler's report on that. Oh, sorry. Yeah, that's right. See, that's why.
You can skip me. The only thing I have is with the change in weather, everything becoming nice outside, we're starting to see an uptick again in car break-ins, people going by and checking cars and grabbing stuff out of unlocked cars. We've started some direct patrols in the areas that have been hit so far, but what we really need is for people to stop leaving their cars and stuff unlocked, checking their surroundings when they go inside. It's that time of year again. We're going to start seeing an uptick in thefts and things like that, porch pirates, car break-ins.
Okay, thank you. I'm assuming Mr. Kreidler's report with public buildings was part of fire, or does he have something additional?
Yes.
Okay. Recreation playgrounds, please.
Recreation and playgrounds did not meet this month. It's our last meeting. We're just this week getting some numbers and estimate back on water control analysis at Summit Park in consideration of the Brock Foundation proposal for new courts there. So next meeting will be to be announced.
Okay. Thank you. Streets, public improvements, and lights, please.
The Streets Committee did meet and discussed a couple of different topics. One of the main areas that we're working on is a stormwater project to help mitigate stormwater runoff in the Oak Road, Hedgerow, Albion areas. A lot of this water is being generated by impervious surface that's been put down in the area of Bethany School. And then there is a lot of water runoff generated from the impervious surface in the area of Woodlawn. It flows into the Oak Road Greenbelt and then heads, oddly enough, north toward Sharon Road. So we covered the engineering study that's going on there, and we have a timeline set up for that. We're on track to have the study done sometime in the latter part of this month, April. There'll be a public meeting where the engineers will present their findings and their recommendations for improvements in the Oak Road Greenbelt area. Most of the improvements on Albion and Hedgerow have already been identified, and they're combining those two things so that we'll get the best result from that work. Then we also discussed the Underground Railroad very briefly. That project, a term sheet has been circulated by the mayor, and the committee in general feels pretty good that the term sheet is a good way to proceed, and we're working with ECAC on that term sheet and how we move forward with that project. There was comment earlier about the water infrastructure in the village. David mentioned the CMOM, the funds that are being spent there, the research that's being done. In addition to what David said about televising lines and finding areas for improvement, there's also some work being done to identify old lines that may be smaller than what would be standard, smaller diameter than what would be standard for today, and plans are being developed for how to improve those lines. That is currently being coordinated with street resurfacing plans, and some of the street resurfacing that we would do this year is being put on the back burner because some of the lines that we have identified to replace are underneath some of the streets that we would be resurfacing this year. Those streets can be patched and they'll be okay. But this sort of speaks to the level of effort that our village administration, the enterprise group, utilities, and Kevin Bell, and the streets, Tom Aldorfer, is putting forward for planning for the village and village infrastructure. There was also a comment that doesn't exactly pertain to this about a records request. David, as far as I understand, any records that have been requested have been supplied to the best of the village's ability. And beyond that, I do not think that records would be submitted or not submitted to anyone in this village based on race or creed or gender or whatever one might throw out. That's simply not how the village operates. It would not withhold records just based on the color of someone's skin or their race. So, David, is there anything you would add to that?
No, that summarizes it nicely. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Well, I just have a question for clarification, because I thought the council has received an email saying that additional records in response to Mr. Parrish's request have been identified, but have not been provided to him yet, and will be provided to him later this month. Now,
Is that a new
did I
request?
misunderstand?
That's a request that's in progress, and we have communicated with Mr. Parrish and his representation a date. I'm not sure if we've heard back from them or not as far as the compatibility, I guess, of that date. But
We have that confirmed.
Thank you. All records requests that the village has received have either been fulfilled or are in progress of being fulfilled.
Oh, in progress.
Correct.
Thank you.
Thank you. Utilities, please.
The Utilities Committee did meet, and a lot of the topics that were discussed in that meeting have been covered already relative to the inflow of stormwater into the sewer system. We did make progress on 3 actions, one of which was to authorize the purchase of some technical equipment which will help identify the source of the water entering into the wastewater system. Secondly, as we approved this evening, the ordinance, the committee approved the surcharge or fee for using a credit card in processing payment of your water bill. And thirdly, the committee approved the beginning approach for an RFP. That's a request for price quotation for replacement of the manual and ancient water meters that we have in the village, to replace them with remote read meters that will eliminate the need to manually walk around the village and take data in handwritten form and key it in manually, which will save the village considerable funds. The financing of that purchase is something that will be discussed for the coming months, with the hope of finding at a minimum, if not a grant, a zero interest loan, and that may require that we wait for installation until sometime in mid-2023, I believe, right, David? It was like March or?
Yes, construction wouldn't be able to begin until July of '23.
July, okay. So in the meantime, we will begin the study of such things as how many homes have meters inside in the basement versus on the street. We'll have a chance to look perhaps at lead lines and other factors that will involve the cost of replacing those meters. And we will meet again on April the 20th. Thank you.
Thank you.
And returning to reports from the clerk and treasurer, Madam Clerk, lots going on with you these days, but I'm not sure you have a report.
Sure. My report is that we, as David mentioned earlier, have closed the books for 2021. And I thank you for passing the ordinance to clear up the old checks that are hanging out there, because those are a pain when you're including that. And we will be continuing to improve our processes and get things, I don't want to say under control, because that sounds like we're not in control, but to get them a little bit more refined, and probably change up some reports to get better reporting in hand as needed. And we'll be giving you updates on the UAN transition. So as we start approaching that, which should help in the long run.
Mr. Treasurer, your report?
I've submitted the report to council. Everyone should have a copy of that in your email. Mr. Bessel pointed out that treasuries are rising, and so we're going to take a look at opportunity to maybe purchase some treasuries with some money that we have in our checking accounts. This is not free money, it's in our checking account earning like 0.01%. So it's an opportunity to leverage treasury rate rising to maybe get additional interest to cover some expenses. So more to come. Probably, I'll probably send something out to council once we are able to capture some of those treasuries. I'll do that ahead of the next council meeting, just for information.
All right. Thank you. Before we turn to the financial reports, I'd just like to make an observation. You know, they say that when you go into politics, you have to have a very thick skin. And I think we all found that to be the case. But there are times when I really can't just sit back and let it flow. We were today called liars, and even worse than that, liars to a court, which is a crime of perjury. My first question to that person would be, we don't make any money here. Do you really think that we would risk prosecution for a crime just for the, you know, for no apparent financial or other gain? And in fact, we have been very forthcoming with the courts. This gentleman has, on several occasions, sued the village, and he has either lost a case, or he voluntarily withdrew it, as he did with his latest one. So we are going to continue responding to records requests and continue doing the best we can in that regard. And then we will, let things, let Mr. Parrish, if he feels that he has some evidence to support his charges. We have a prosecutor in this county, Joe Dieters, who's not known as a softie, and so he can go to Mr. Dieters and explain his evidence. And that's all I want to say about that. I'm sorry. We have received 2 reports, a general fund on expenditures and a enterprise fund expenditures. We are promised some additional reports now that the problem of getting our financial reconciliations is done. So do I have a motion to acknowledge the receipt of these reports?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Chair will now entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Opposed?